Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to this talk called Navigating Security, Governance and Ethical Decision Making. And because of the airport theme, I had to throw the sort of some reference to the sky in there somewhere. But welcome to this talk. Thank you for coming along. Recognize a few faces in here. Some people I have worked with. Some you might recognize some of these scenarios, guys, when I go through some of these later. And some I've met yesterday on on another talk I was doing around building a data culture. But welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. This talk, we're going to kind of breaks down into about 3 or 4 different sections and different areas we're going to look at. I will warn you in advance, this is not a technical session. If you're coming in here expecting to learn lots of technical detail, you're not going to get that today. We will look at some tools and technology that can help us with security, can help us with governance, and I've got a little bit of a fun end to the show for you as well, where we've got some case studies, and I'm going to get some audience participation and interaction. So get your phones ready, because I'm going to get you to scan a QR code to complete a form when we get to the end. So I'll start, just give you a little bit of information about me. My name's Gethin Ellis. I've been working in the data space for the best part of 25 years, mainly in technology. Truthfully, I've had a variety of jobs in that time, from report writer, web developer, DBA, and 17 years ago, I started my own consultancy and training business, and one of my very first clients is sat in the front row here today. The 2 of them, all smiling, and they're repeat business, so clearly I'm doing a good job for them. They keep coming back for more. But it's not. I digress. So 17 years ago, I started my business, and it was a data consultancy. It was upgrades, it was performance tuning, it was security, but more and more lately, in particular, as organizations are transitioning to the cloud, and more organizations are trying to do more with their data to make better decisions, to use that data to fuel things like AI that can automate processes for them. We've actually been asked a lot more around the sort of strategic element of what the technology does. So lots of people will invest in a modern data platform, but they don't really get the full benefit out of it because it doesn't align to what the business is trying to achieve. So we've spent a little bit of time over the last few years advising various different organizations of different sizes on how they can align their data strategy to their business strategy to get real value from it. So that's a little bit about me. I think if we're not connected on LinkedIn, look me up. Apologies for the... It's not my email address isn't displaying very well on this slide here, but it looks really good on the one I'm looking at here. All right. But it's gethin@gethinellis.com. Any questions on what we talk about today, you are most welcome to drop me an email, reach out and ask, and I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn as well. I do use Twitter and Blue Sky. I am there. I don't use it all that often. Now, if you can get your phone out and scan this QR code, at the end of the session, I've got a few case studies and scenarios I'm going to share with you, and I'd like to get your input in it, and it'd be quite a good way of feeding back. So I'll just give you a minute or two to scan that. I will put it on again toward the end of the as we get to those case studies. But if you can do that now, I know the internet can be a bit shaky, and you might not get there, so I'm asking you to do that now. Okay, security, governance, and ethics. Then that's what we're going to focus on. For those of you that have been to my sessions before, you know I like to turn my presentations into a bit of a story, just to keep you entertained and engaged, and hopefully the stuff that comes up in the stories it will resonate with you. All right? So I'm going to introduce you to Berry Wand. Berry is the Chief Data Officer for a made-up police force in Wales. I call it Pontypandy Police, all right, after Fireman Sam. Berry's been in this role now for the best part of 3 years. And if you were on my session yesterday, you'd have seen some of the challenges she encountered when she first took on that job. But she's now firmly established, and she's doing really well in terms of the business and the police force making better use of its data. Now, as the CDO, she's responsible for the organization, for managing the data, managing the governance of that data for the business. And more, this role is becoming increasingly more important, probably more in more traditional organizations that didn't span from, weren't born as a technology company, for example, but as those organizations are trying to transition to be more and more, make better use of the data and go through that digital transformation, this role is definitely coming into prominence. Now, Berry's been quite successful in those 3 years. She's made great strides in her police force, making better use of her data, and that's what we're going to look at today. But in the rapidly changing landscape of a modern enterprise, a modern business, digital transformation initiatives are ongoing. It is making things like security governance and ethical management. These are becoming critical pillars of organizational integrity, and it can have a significant impact on the success of your business. I'm talking about the police force here. A week doesn't go by without some data breach of some kind coming into force, and I think it was about a year ago, there was a significant data breach in a police force in the UK, the Northern Ireland Police Service, inadvertently exposed the names and addresses and personal identifiable information of their workforce and staff. That would be quite a big deal for any police, any police force, but in Northern Ireland in particular, with all the sort of security concerns there, that was literally potentially putting lives at risk. So Berry, in her role in the police, is going to be concerned with that. Now, when we're talking about security governance, right, this is what's going to build our trust in what we are doing. Right, so these are the responsibilities and practice that we, as an organisation, is going to allow both our board, our senior management, to provide the strategic direction, right, make sure our objectives are achieved and risk is managed appropriately. Right, and when it comes to ethical management, that's operating in a manner that where you've been considerate of ethical principles and values and making decisions that are not just legally compliant, but morally sound, and taking into account the well-being of your various different stakeholders, whether they're employees, customers, perhaps the environment or society at large. So this security governance, these are the frameworks and processes that are going to make sure our data assets are protected, right, and they can help set strategic direction. When it comes to risk management, which is a key component of security governance, this is establishing the right frameworks, aligning those business objectives. I'm sure, I'm looking around here, and I actually know a few people in here, and I know that the industries that you work in, and you're all going to have different regulations you need to adhere to, and various other things you're going to need to make sure you comply with. So you're going to need to manage that risk, right? Because there are through our risk management framework, we are going to want to consider things like cyber threats, data privacy, any other sort of security vulnerabilities as well, and complying with our regulations to avoid legal repercussions, but also to build that trust with our stakeholders. Then we're going to need to, we're going to need to how to handle responses, have an incident response plan, or outlining how to manage and recover from security breaches. And sometimes when the cat's out of the bag, the cat's out of the bag, right? But like, for example, there's lots and lots of these happen all the time. Has anyone ever been affected by a data breach? Has a company ever contacted them and told them, yeah, okay, well, I have as well. Well, I ended up having to change bank details and stuff because the mortgage company or the firm I took my mortgage out with managed to expose my bank details out there on the internet. And they kindly wrote to me, sent me a text message, which I didn't believe. I'm like, that's fraud. And then I actually got in touch with them just to check, and they're like, no, that was their incident response plan, sending me a text message, which I didn't believe initially. Granted, right, and this is an example, I've now lost trust in that company and I don't use them anymore. Right? So it has a knock-on effect and repercussions. Now, ethical management and ethical management principles, right? I frame this as doing the right thing even when nobody's looking. Right? That's kind of my take on it. And this is really about leading your business and leading your organization that's considerate of ethical principles and values that your business stands for. Right? Making decisions that are both legally compliant but also morally sound. Right? Now, from a data ethics and privacy perspective, I know, because I've spoken to several people in here, and I know various different businesses, we're all trying to make better use of our data. It's becoming a critical asset for our business. Right? So we need to manage that in an ethical way, right? And in how we collect it, how we share it, how we manage it. And there's a fine line between leveraging data for business insight and then respecting individual privacy rights and ensuring transparency and making sure they're consistent. And the other thing on that slide there is corporate social responsibility. And ethical management very much extends into this realm, where a business acknowledges it plays a broader role in society, and then it makes a commitment to have a positive impact with that regard. And I know, again, because I know a lot of people in here, that some organizations are well on that way and take their corporate social responsibility very seriously. So we need to integrate security governance and ethical management. It's going to provide a solid foundation for us to build our business in the digital age. It can have serious business benefits. It can help your brand. Right? If you're known for robust security practices and ethical conduct, it can heighten brand loyalty and it can help build a strong customer base. It can give you that competitive advantage. Right? It can be a unique selling point where you can attract customers and top talent, and for those people who value the security of their data, it can be really, really, really useful. And it will ensure the long-term sustainability of your company. I don't know how that mortgage company is now doing, but I can only imagine it had a pretty damaging effect on their business going forward. Okay, so data security challenges then. Let's talk about those. We live in an age where data gets its own analogies, right? And sometimes it's called the new gold, which is wonderful. Right? I generally don't use that one. I'd like to say it because it gives me some filler time. I like to call it oil, right? Because data, when it comes out, it's messy and mucky and next to useless, but you put it through a refining process and you get something really valuable in the end product in the form of fuel. And that fuel can be used to drive business growth. It is that fuel that will drive AI and all those other things, all those other cool things we're looking to do. Now, the use of that data brings its own challenges for our business, right? Technology is changing at pace, and that technological change can outstrip the development of security measures that are trying to protect our data, which might mean if they're left unaddressed, it can expose us to additional risks or inadvertently expose us to additional risks. Sorry, I didn't mean to move on then. Click the button. Sophistication of cyber attacks is it's increasing all the time. You know, cyber criminals, let's call them that, they're able to make use of all the technology we are trying to use to drive our businesses forward. They're perhaps not doing it in an ethical way, but they are there. There's been lots of change. I say lots of change, not that much change, but there's lots of regulatory compliance and data sovereignty. Governments and governments in particular are taking data protection very seriously. I think the EU led the way with the GDPR regulation back in 2018. I think that came in, but there's stuff in California, there's stuff in Canada. In Europe, for example, I know Germany have very strict data sovereignty requirements that you have to adhere to. So these are all the challenges that come in. So from a police perspective, there's definitely going to be regulatory stuff around their data and where that can be put. And using the example of the data leak, right, to my knowledge, and I'm not privy to this, this is just what's in the public domain. When that police leak happened, apparently it came from a freedom of information request came in, they put together the data, and they sent out the wrong file. So they hadn't redacted the stuff that needed to be redacted. Right? So clearly there was a process failure somewhere along that line. Now that's an accident, that's an insider threat, but that's accidental. I don't believe it was deliberate. I'm not aware of it being deliberate. But there are risks that we need to manage and consider that as well. And as we move to the cloud, I imagine most people, their data platform sits in the cloud in some way, shape or form, or at least part of it does. We need to consider cloud security as well. Now, cloud is scalable, cloud is flexible. Cloud has been around for a long time. The biggest drag on the uptake of products like Azure and AWS over the years was the need for security and was the need for organizations who have regulatory compliance to be able to adhere to it. And the cloud companies, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, they've invested heavily in this area, but it's still not perfect and it's still not right for everybody. And there are additional risks that our organizations are going to need to adhere to. So how can you overcome some of these challenges? Well, some of these are listed on here. Implementing a zero trust architecture. Has everyone heard of zero trust architecture? Yeah. So basically, it's a model where we assume threats can originate from anywhere. So we verify requests as if they're originating from an untrusted network, and that can significantly improve your security posture. You can train your staff in security awareness. Lots of training programs that can help mitigate that risk as well. There are technologies, and I'll mention some of those in a little bit, that can help when it comes to managing your security and helping you build a secure position for your data. You can do things like risk assessments and regular audits of your data to look for and identify potential vulnerabilities. And and when you're building your solutions, if you can bake data privacy and data protection in by design, they're then going to be embedded into your organization and your application as you go forward. Now, when it comes to data governance, again, you're going to need frameworks in place that are going to allow you to make decisions based on your data, make the best use of your data, and allow you to harness the full power of what it's got to offer. All right, so when it comes to data governance, this is going to integrate data management, security, quality, and compliance, making sure the data is accurate, making sure the data making sure the data is available. It's going to make sure we've got the right departments, the right organizations involved and on board, and that might involve IT, it might involve legal, it might involve finance, it might involve business operations. So we can establish and put together a unified approach to managing our data. So the fundamental objective of governance here is to allow us to extract value of the data while mitigating the risks that come with that data management and the compliance needs that we're going to need to adhere to as well. Now, some of the core principles here are listed on the slide. There are several principles that I'm just going to talk about very briefly. In terms of sort of data stewardship and ownership, we need a clear delineation of data ownership and stewardship. It's going to be critical for good governance. Right? Data owners, they might be senior executives who are accountable for the data assets within their domain. The stewards might be the people who are responsible for the day-to-day management, making sure it's accurate, complete, and complies with various different policies. Data quality. If we're using data to make decisions, the data actually needs to be accurate. It needs to be a high quality of data. So we need to make sure we've got the right processes in place that's going to help us clean and transform that data, reconciling that data, making sure it's accurate and reliable for the decisions to be made. The old garbage in, garbage out is very much an important thing these days, because if your data is inaccurate, you can end up making inaccurate decisions, which will be detrimental. But taking that a step back, if your data is inaccurate and people then don't trust the data, then they're not going to use it to its best advantage either. Obviously, I've talked about security and protecting from, making sure your data is safe and secure. We need to have those measures in place, and that will feed into our data governance. And we need to manage the life cycle of our data from creation to destruction, right, archive and deletion. So we're going to have the right policies in place so we can comply with any sort of legal and regulatory compliance, and to make sure we manage that in an ethical way as well. I think I've just talked about all that all in one go there. Regulatory compliance I've talked about. Yeah, we're going to need to make sure that our governance takes those into account. We want to be transparent. We want to be accountable. Right? So the whole point of governance is going to promote that transparency and show how data is managed and used and shared inside and outside the organization. Giving your stakeholders, allowing them to understand the role that they play in that governance framework is going to be key. And you need to communicate and collaborate as well. Right? It's going to be a cross-functional, cross-department, cross-business. You're going to need to establish this across your business. You might have a governance body, I don't know, a governance board, a governance council, call them what you like, that will allow you to facilitate decision making and policy development, and issue resolutions and all sorts of stuff there to make decisions. Now, word on the technology and tooling, right? So I've talked about security, I've talked about data governance. There is technology that can help you with this, and we're just going to look very briefly at what these look like here. So technology can help you; it can't do it for you. You need to get the right people and processes in place to manage your security and your governance. Now, the one I'm going to look at a little bit here is Purview. Okay, this is a governance service that will help you manage your on-premises data. It can work across different clouds. It can work across your software as a service data, right? And it will build up this holistic, up-to-date map of your data landscape. It can help with sort of data discovery. It can do data classification. It can show you the end-to-end lineage of your data so you can see where it's created and how it's ended up where it's ended up. Right, now, what we do with that, there are a few main elements to Purview. Is anyone using Purview currently? A few hands, yeah, okay, cool. There's a data map, there's a data catalog, it's got some data insight stuff, there's a new preview in the portal as well, which meant I had to update my screenshots this morning. I'll show you that in a little bit. And there's some cool stuff in preview as well, so stuff around data sharing and data policies where you can govern. I think they're currently in private preview. But the process for using Purview, you register your data sources, right? You're going to load the data into your map, and it'll get scanned. I would show you a demo, but the internet's a little bit dodgy and it's not working too well. And I wasn't forward thinking enough to record these when I put them together this morning. When I was putting this together. Now we will have this data map. We're going to load the map via a scan, register our sources. We're then going to run a scan. Metadata will be used to help classify our data, and there's a few classification rules, right? And it can help classify your data into like 5 different areas, whether it's government, financial, personal, or security attributes like passwords, and there's a miscellaneous one as well. And then we can organize this into collections, which is a way of grouping our data assets into logical collections to simplify the management and discovery of those assets, and you can view those in the map. So I'm just going to, if I click over a slide here, bear with me. Right, so this is what the governance portal looks like. So we've got data map at the bottom, data catalog, information protection, data loss prevention, insider risk management, to name a few. If I dive into the data map to begin with, this is what mine looks like now. I don't have a big data estate in my tenant, right? But I've got Fabric and I have got a SQL server. So I've got those data sources registered. These are going to be what we're going to look at as we go through here. Then, once we've got those registered and populated our map, we'd run a scan. That top one is it's done some classification for me. Right? I've kind of added those in. I can't actually see what it's classified it as. I think it's UK passport number. And then on the bottom, we're showing where the data's come from. So this is looking at an education report that I've got that's come from an education semantic model, and it's got a dependency of a dashboard on the report as well. So we can give you this insight, right? And it can show us what we've got. It can show us what data is classified and where it sits. And then we can put data protection policies around that as well, so that'll govern how that data can then be shared and distributed. So there's a couple of use cases for Purview, right? That data catalog element is key. If you're trying to build a data culture, you want there to be some self-service element to what you're trying to do. But then how do people know that that data is available? And if you're in a smaller organization, that might be easy enough to communicate. But if you're in a large organization like a police force, where you might be disparate and spread around a particular region, you might not be aware that that data exists until you come across it as part of your job or process. Right, so it can help with that discovery. It can help make your federated your citizen data analysts who are trying to use data to make better decisions, find the data that they need, and it can help with governance as well. It can help with things like government regulation and making sure we're adhering to those. So it's a really, really useful tool for governance. It's ever evolving, it's changing all the time. There's lots of stuff in preview that can be quite useful as well. From a security perspective, there are others. Right, these are Microsoft products, but others are out there like Microsoft Defender and Sentinel. Defender's it's a security tool developed by Microsoft that gives you this. It protects you from things like viruses and malware and spyware across your cloud and across your on-premises, across your on-premises data sources as well. So that can be very good for protecting your security position. Sentinel is a security information and event management solution. So again, this has got AI baked into it, and it's able to analyze and detect threats across your estate. Right? So it's got things like alert detection, it's got it can look for threats and vulnerabilities, and it can give you visibility of those threats. It can do proactive hunting, and it can help you respond to those threats as well. And again, there's lots of machine learning baked in, and it's continually learning all the time. You can get false positives from it, but it will integrate with other solutions and other third-party products to give you and build this complete enterprise solution. Okay, so we've talked about security, we've talked about governance. Let's talk a little bit about ethics here. Right? We need to consider the ethical implications of what we're doing with our data. Right? So that might mean going beyond the legal requirements, right? And perhaps respecting individual privacy and individuals' autonomy. Now, we need to be committed to the accuracy of our data, but we also want to ensure the sort of well-being and fairness to the parties involved. Right, so it's important, we want to try and mitigate bias. And to ensure we get that fairness and to ensure that what we're doing with our data doesn't inadvertently discriminate against somebody. Now, if we consider these ethical principles, we can then build that trust and build that accountability in our data handling and management practices. And I'm going to bring this back to the police force in just a sec. Right, so this is going beyond regulatory compliance. Right? There's ethical considerations in here too. Now, these need to reflect, well, they will reflect the responsibility of the organization and the responsibility they have to those individuals whose data they hold, as well as to sort of society at large. Right? So really, it's not just about adhering to those laws. Right? It's about respecting privacy, ensuring fairness, and fostering trust. Now, some of these we have touched on, but from an ethical perspective, when it comes to sort of privacy and consent, one of the main considerations here is respecting individuals and individuals' privacy. Right, that's not just adhering to privacy laws, but perhaps going beyond the legal requirements to make sure that our data is collected, used, and shared in a way that will respect the individual. Right, and that might be, making sure we have consent is the cornerstone of this ethical data management, making sure you have consent to use that data. And perhaps that implies that individuals are fully aware on how their data is going to be used and have willingly agreed for it to be used in this manner. Data accuracy and data quality, granted that's key. If we're using machine learning and AI to make decisions, that data needs to be accurate. Inaccurate data can definitely lead to cause harm or wrong decisions to be made, which can impact and affect individuals' lives and well-being if it's inaccurate. So we need to make sure we get the right data verification processes in place, and also give people the ability to correct anything that is inaccurate. Now, we need to make sure that we don't inadvertently discriminate or bring bias into our data. Right, so we need to take measures to identify and mitigate any sort of biases in our data collection, in our analysis, in our decision-making process, making sure it's fair. And we would probably need to scrutinize algorithms that we are using for our models for potential bias, and make sure that the data practices we are carrying out are not disadvantaging individuals and groups, which is a bit of a scary thing to do, right? But we want to be transparent and open. That will foster trust and accountability. We want to be open about our data practices, perhaps being open about how we collect, use, and share that data. And then when things go wrong, as they clearly do, might be prepared to take responsibility and address the issues promptly as well, right? Building that trust. Now, I've got a couple of examples. I've got lots of good examples of this over the years, right? But I'm going to pull this back to the police. We've come to the case study element here, right? So I've got some case studies, bringing it back to Berry and her police force. I know we've got some other police forces in today, so it'll be interesting to see the people's take on this. Right, I've got 3 for us to look at, right? And these are all related to the police. So if you haven't got the form up, this is there. And all I want you to do is to rate whether you think what's going on here is ethical or unethical, or somewhere in between, because I don't think it's definitely not a binary decision. So case study 1, right, ensuring data accuracy in criminal records. Right, so Berry, as the Chief Data Officer of Pontypandy Police. She's got this challenge when an audit reveals there's inaccuracies in the criminal records database. Right, I'm making this up. Right? Now, these inaccuracies have led to wrongful arrests, misidentification of individuals, and it's undermined public trust. So Berry needs to lead this initiative to improve the data accuracy and quality across this system. That might look at what's caused the inaccuracies in the first place, which might be multiple siloed manual data entry processes, outdated information that hasn't been properly updated and that kind of stuff. So Berry undertakes a comprehensive data quality improvement program that includes things like advanced data entry verification, additional stuff to minimize manual errors, some software that can help with that, data review process, right? Perhaps using AI, perhaps using human oversight to identify and correct outdated or incorrect information, and then launch a data literacy campaign within her police force to emphasize the importance of the accuracy in the data handling and reporting. Now, over time, the accuracy of those records improves significantly, leading to fewer wrongful arrests and a noticeable improvement in public trust. And then they've become an exemplar police force for other police forces in the UK. And she's sharing her insights and strategies at the national level. Now, this is one. Do you think that Berry's acted in an ethical way in what she's done with that? And I just want you to, it's a scale of 1 to 10. I know it's a net promoter score. I promise I'm not asking you for 10s. I'm quite happy for you to put 5s or 1s or whatever in regard to that. Now, I've actually got a true real life story around this as well, right? When I was working for the police, it was been 20 years ago, they were implementing a new record management system called Niche. Right? And as part of this system, I got told a story about a US-based police force that was using the same product. Right? And this all comes down to data accuracy. Now, the force had done extensive testing, made up a whole bunch of crimes and people. Right? One of the testers had input their grandmother's address many times. I think the grandmother was a convicted murderer, drug dealer, very serious crime she'd been given in this system. Then the system went live. About 4 days later, Grandma's house is raided by the police because they hadn't cleaned up the test data properly. This is going back a long time, but it was a very, very sort of funny story. Right, so you've all had to vote on that case study. Good. Next one. This is predictive policing. This is a thing. All right? Now, Berry's building this data-driven culture, and they're considering implementing a predictive policing system that's going to use data analytics to anticipate crimes before they occur. All right? Now, while some systems, the system is promising to deliver public safety, it does raise perhaps some concerns around data privacy and definitely some ethical concerns in there as well around bias and discrimination. Now, Berry has been charged, not in the legal sense, she hasn't been arrested, right? But she has been challenged, if you like, to make sure that the predictive policing system, basically respects those privacy rights. It doesn't unfairly target specific communities. It requires a delicate balance between leveraging data and public safety. So what Berry did, she again set up a task force, she employed a team of data scientists, but also ethics and community representatives. They go through ethical reviews of the predictive policing system, looking for bias in data sources and in the algorithms. She's got this framework in play that's open and transparent, with guidelines on collection, use, and sharing. And there's an oversight mechanism where basically they're regularly auditing the system to make sure that the decisions they make are fair and non-discriminatory. And then they have deployed this predictive policing system, and it's being used. So, can you now just take a minute to vote on case study 2? How do you feel about that? Ethical, unethical, somewhere in between. The reason I put this one in here, West Midlands Police, I think in 2019, invested a significant sum of money in this space. And if you search the internet, there was a Freedom of Information request in around about 2022, where people were asking what types of stuff they were looking to predict, and it was basically in the realm of knife crime. But as part of this Freedom of Information request, they were very open and transparent, and they basically said, if you look at the sort of media reports and coverage of what they've done here, they're trying to get that balance right. They have a scrutiny committee and an ethics committee that challenge those decisions to try and make sure there's no bias in there. I guess the challenge with anyone making decisions of this nature, though, is the data's, it's based on the data that they've got, and if that's not accurate, or if that does have bias in it, then it can come out. But we'll have a look at these results in just a sec. So I'm going to just click over to the third one. This is the Community Sentinel Initiative. So, community policing is a big deal for police forces. So Bury's launched this initiative that's designed to improve police-community relations. Right, so the public's perception of police forces was deteriorating. Right, that might have been, that deterioration in trust may have been contributed to by perhaps a lack of engagement with community leaders and residents. So Bury's team have developed this community outreach program. They get data from community surveys, social media, sentiment analysis, local town hall meetings to help guide police community strategies. Now, this ultimately led to the formation of neighborhood watch programs informed by data insights, fostering stronger community ties, and this initiative increased public trust in Bury's police force and in their ratings. And again, this has been rolled out at other communities as well. So what do you think about the community initiative there? I'll just let you vote on that, and then what I'm going to do, if I end that slideshow and come and find the responses, we'll have a look at how you voted. I've got 8 responses in here. Thank you for everyone who has 12 now. 14. Let me just do a quick duplicate here. So hopefully we can see the results. So if I come across to these responses, we can see, somewhere in the middle. Very negative on the second one. That's kind of what I was expecting, and somewhere in the middle on the third. Excellent. Okay, so let's have a look at those in Excel. Get ready to enjoy my data in Excel. I'm rolling with anticipation. So, what have we got? It's all anonymized, that's good. ID 1, 2, 3. Case study 1, few 10s, few 4s. Case study 2, very low scores. Case study 3, a range from 3 to 10 being in there. Okay, so some people like it, some people don't. Cool. Okay, so I guess what I really wanted to show with that is how people act with data can mean different things to different people, and people interpret it in different ways. So you do have to tread that fine line. Now, I'm a bit ahead of time. I've got through this a little bit quicker than I anticipated. Right, but we've looked at the importance of security and ethical management when it comes to working with data. We've talked about some of the security governance and ethical decision-making challenges and some of the actions we can take as leaders to make better use of our data and do it in the right way. I also talked a little bit about the tools and technologies you can use as well. I am 10 minutes early, guys. I will call that there. Thank you very much.